Live from the Jersey Shore to the world. Get up, get out, do something. Wake up with Jeremy Grunin. Take the show wherever you go. Download the free Radio Pup app for your smartphone or tablet. Join the conversation. 732-505-1160. News Talk Radio WOBM AM 1160 and 1310. Listen online at WOBMAM.com.
Hey, welcome back. 7:08, Wednesday, July 27th, getting up to 93 degrees today. It's 74 right now. WOBM AM 1160 and 1310. News Talk Radio, streaming live on the Radio Pup app and WOBMAM.com. 732-505-1160 to join the conversation. We are joined in studio now by Neil Bryant, Vice President of Support Services at Community Medical Center. Good morning, Neil. How are you?
Good morning, Jeremy. Doing well.
That's good. So, why don't you tell folks a little bit about what you do? What does a vice president of support services at a hospital do?
Well, we have the job behind the scenes. Some of it's in front. I get to lead about 400 of the most extraordinary people that make sure your room is clean to prevent infections, to make sure your meals are cooked and delivered hot to you, and also take care of the building and provide rehab services. So it's quite a challenge every day for the team, and they're up to it.
That's awesome. And so your background is your background in medicine, or your background's more in, what is your background in? It's probably easier for me to ask it that way.
Well, that's a great question. I found my way to the hospitals in kind of a different method. Back in 1987, 88, I actually worked for the Toms River Fire Prevention Bureau.
Okay.
And was inspecting at the hospital over the years, and got an offer to come work at the hospital to work on some of the regulatory affairs stuff as it related to fire protection, OSHA, and things like that. So I took the challenge back in 88, and it's been a wonderful experience. I've had lots of opportunity to grow with the hospital. As you know, the hospital back in 88 was much smaller, but now at 600 beds and almost 1 million square feet, it's been nice to grow with the hospital and become part of the community.
So just to review, your plan was you're going to find a lot of issues in the hospital back in 1987, 88, and then you're going to sell them on the fact that you can go fix all of them if they hire you into a job that you kind of fix everything at the hospital. Was that your strategy?
That was my ultimate plan, absolutely.
That
worked well.
That was really good. I mean, that's, you know what, I don't think most people think like that, but it shows a definite strategic thinking that goes a long way. How did you first get into the Fire Prevention Bureau? I mean, what was that? What was the motivation there?
Well, I always had an interest in some community service, and when I was a young guy, I started as a junior firefighter up in Point Pleasant Borough. I went to the Air Force, and because I was colorblind, I wasn't able to be a firefighter. One of the requirements for a fireman is you have to be able to see color. So I wound up in Air Force intelligence, which is kind of a contradiction in terms.
It's an oxymoron, right?
It is. And really, cut my teeth there and learned management skills and people skills in the Air Force, which was a great opportunity for me. Came out, still had a passion for the fire service. Wound up down here in Toms River, and then ultimately over at the hospital. And it was a really good connection at the hospital as far as moving from one modality to another.
Very cool. So what an interesting path to where you are today, right? Not something you thought of when you were in high school.
Absolutely. I think high school and college, I was not looking at a hospital administrator's job.
Right. That's cool.
And sometimes fate gets you into the right location.
Absolutely. By the way, the whole Air Force intelligence, oxymoron, contradiction in terms, that was Neil Bryant speaking. I was simply paraphrasing. I, of course, huge fan of the Air Force, big fan of McGuire. So I just want to make sure it's on record that way appropriately. So Neil, why don't you tell us, let's kind of dive in a little bit about what you do day to day. So, for example, hospital preparedness for emergencies. So, unfortunately, we've had to deal with this to a large extent here at the Jersey Shore. Natural, man-made, and how do you keep kind of community medical center running on a daily basis?
Well, the emergency management is something that's probably one of the top priorities for not only Community Medical Center but RWJ Barnabas Health. And we do a lot of work as it relates to education, training, equipment, and ensuring we're prepared. A great example would be when the Ebola virus first started to come out. We spent a lot of time with our clinical folks, our infection control doctors, as well as our state and federal partners to ensure that not only could we manage a case if we would get one in one of our facilities, but we would also be able to protect our employees and our visitors. As you know, that's a highly contagious type of an illness. So we needed to make sure we had everything together. I joke with folks. I said I have 900 pairs of washable shoes because part of the protocol was that the employees who were taking care of the patients needed to have washable clogs. So believe it or not, we're a little shoe factory over at the hospital.
Nice, great job, Geppetto. So you brought up Robert Wood Johnson. Let's touch on that for a second because I think, and I could be wrong. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think really the merger, the Robert Wood Johnson merger, may be the most impactful for what you do, based on kind of creating operational efficiencies, et cetera. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. Well, I think the first place we're seeing some operational efficiency is in emergency management. One of my roles not only is at Community Medical Center, but for the corporation under the old Barnabas Health, I was the corporate director for the emergency planning for the system. With that, we've brought in the RWJ folks and have now put those two large departments together. And not only do we now have the state's only burn center as it relates to planning with the what was once called the Burn MCC and a large consortium that goes from Maine to Virginia, but we also now have tertiary hospital up in New Brunswick that is run. So from an emergency services standpoint, with 11 hospitals in very key locations, a lot of consolidation needs to happen as far as planning. So instead of having 11 different plans, we have a singular plan that is site-specific. So a lot of work's going into how do we put all that together to make sure as an organization we can respond efficiently and effectively.
Very cool. And so some of the things that you've kind of done to reduce exposure in the event of emergency. So let's kind of go through these a little bit. So number one, how do you deal with the potential for utility loss?
Well, utilities are something that we spend a lot of time looking at. And when you think of utilities, most of us think of water and electricity at home. Well, at a hospital, in addition to water and electricity, we have medical gases. We have steam that we generate from boilers. We also have a large infrastructure that we need to support. So on an electrical side, if you were to look at what we can generate during a power failure, we generate 5 megawatts of electricity. 5 megawatts of electricity will serve about 3,000 homes, just to give you an order of magnitude. In addition, heating and cooling, of course, is very important. You know, way back in Katrina, the Toro Hospital was in business during the entire storm until they lost electric and the ability to make air conditioning. And with the loss of air conditioning, had to evacuate and close that entire hospital, which at the time was the only hospital operating. So one of the things we have is about almost 3,000 tons of cooling. And to put that in perspective for you, 3,000 tons of cooling compared to a home, which is 3 tons of cooling.
Wow.
We can cool about 842 homes here in Toms River during the heat wave.
Wow. 5 megawatts. That's what it took to power the flux capacitor in the Back to the Future DeLorean, wasn't it?
I think it was 8 gigawatts. So
was it 8 gigawatts?
I think we're getting close. Next expansion.
I just wasn't sure. I get my megawatts and my gigawatts confused. All right. When we come back, I want to talk about really one of the most important things, which is how you kind of flex up and down for the influx of patients that, God forbid, happens from a disaster or a major emergency. Neil Bryant, Vice President, Support Services, Community Medical Center. Back. Wake Up with Jeremy Grunin after this.
Connect with Jeremy, 732-505-1160. Wake Up with Jeremy Grunin. News Talk Radio, WOBM AM 1160, 1310, and WOBMAM.com.
Hey, welcome back. Wake Up with Jeremy Grunin. Neil Bryant, Vice President, Support Services, Community Medical Center. So we were talking about how, as a Vice President of Support Services, we are getting prepared for example, for a large influx of patients. So what do we do? What do we do if we, God forbid, have that happen?
So at the hospital, a lot of work is done with not only our emergency services department down the ED, but along with the inpatient side of the house. And one of our plans is for, as you said, a large influx of patients. So very similar to the town's reverse 911 system, we have a very similar system. We activate, we recall people back in, including our physicians, nursing, and support staff, and we will actually set up a large triage area and then start triaging people to the right level of care, and in certain cases actually transfer people to other locations based on the level of care needed. So we do practice that at least once a year to make sure that everybody's up to speed on it. We do a lot of education and training around it.
Cool. All right, what about in the case of like a chemical, nuclear, biological event? What do we do there?
Well, right after 9/11, there was a large investment made within the healthcare system, including community medical center, to ensure that should there be a large event like that, we're prepared. I think community was uniquely positioned for that type of response based on the Oyster Creek Power Plant. A lot of planning that's done in Ocean County related to emergency management includes the ability of the organizations to respond not only to a large problem within the community due to a release of a chemical or biological, but also should somebody be injured in the plant, how we'd manage that. So we've put together a number of teams. One is our emergency room team, and we have what we call our decontamination showers. They know how to dress. They've got breathing equipment and protective gear. And then for larger scale emergencies, we have a large pop-up tent, and we can run through about 100 people an hour through our decontamination process.
Right. Wow. Decontamination shower. That's kind of how I felt after I got in from doing some yard work yesterday afternoon. I needed one of those. All right. What about like water main breaks, fires? I mean, those are like it's amazing how much emergency response you have to have set up because it just doesn't happen, right? It's not like everybody's like, oh, I know exactly what to do now. We've never practiced it, right?
Right. So one of the things you do, and we do this every year with our safety department, is they work with all of the local agencies to put together what we call a hazard vulnerability analysis. And in that analysis, we look at a number of scenarios, not only internal to the organization, but external. And we rate them, and there's a scoring grid we use to determine what are the high risks, what are the low risks. Part of that hazardous analysis tells us where we should be budgeting dollars to what we call mitigate or reduce the threat from those. So from a fire perspective, we have a intelligence fire alarm system with about 1,200 smoke detectors. Typical house has about 10 detectors, with the bedrooms having smoke detectors. So you can imagine the magnitude of the system that we use. From a water perspective, we have an emergency water plan, including how do we run boilers. The drinking water is the least of our problems. It's how do we run the building and the amount of water the building takes to function each and every day.
Wow, cool. All right, so couple other points here. You have a 4-day plan. I'm going to do the math in my head. It's a 96-hour plan, but that's 4 days as far as I think. Wait, let me put my shoes back on. 4-day plan for food, pharmaceuticals, medical supplies, fuel, and staffing. How do you do that? How do you prepare yourself for that?
Well, one of the things in the what we call the 4-day or the 96-hour plan is it's really a management tool for us. So the first thing you do is you determine, based on your current stockpiles, how long can you exist with the things that you need, such as pharmaceuticals, food, medical supplies, plenty of scotch.
Right.
I can tell you from Sandy, the one thing we did learn is if you don't have a coffee pot and emergency power,
you're in trouble.
It's a priority. Right. But from that, we determine whether or not we need to evacuate the building in less than 96 hours or we can sustain for the 96 hours. Because in the National Planning Framework, what they require of all hospitals is that they've done the assessment for 96 hours and be able to have the management team know at 48 hours, we're only going to last another 5, so we need to start planning leaving our building. So from that perspective, we sit down with all the stakeholders that are responsible for all these things, our materials management, our food service department, our pharmacies. And this also includes staffing. I mean, staffing is really important. If you look at Community Medical Center, 30% of our people, if you do a zip code search, live in areas that we're going to evacuate during a large storm.
Right.
So 30% of our workforce could be displaced prior to coming to work. So that's a real concern for us.
Absolutely. So when we come back, and it's a good segue, actually, unfortunately, I'd like to talk Sandy. I'd like to talk about how what the hospital's role was in Sandy and some of the important things that you guys did during the storm. And we're also going to give you your magic wand, which I know you've probably been talking to Mimosa about because you really would love one to have in the hospital day to day. Wake Up with Jeremy Grunin, Neil Bryant, Vice President of Support Services. Sorry, no Kevin Williams. He's still on vacation. Don't hate the player, hate the game. Be right back.
Coming up next, the latest from WOBM News, the Town Square, New Jersey News Network, and Fox News Radio. Wake Up with Jeremy Grunin. News Talk Radio, WOBM AM 1160 and 1310. Live from the Bob Levy Broadcast Center, overlooking the Toms River. It's time to get up, get out, do something. Wake Up with Jeremy Grunin. Be a part of the show, 732-505-1160. News Talk Radio WOBM AM 1160 and 1310. Listen online at WOBMAM.com.
Hey, welcome back. Wednesday, July 27th, 7:32 a.m., 74 degrees, got up to 93 today. WOBM AM 1160 and 1310 News Talk Radio, streaming live on the Radio Pop app and WOBMAM.com, 732-505-1160. Join the conversation. We are joined in studio by Neil Bryant, Vice President of Support Services at Community Medical Center. Yes. Got it.
Mouthful.
All right, cool. And so we were talking now a little bit about Superstorm Sandy and the hospital's response. So why don't you talk to me about the role that the hospital played in that tragedy?
Sure. I think the hospital is one of those places that we look at when we need care in an emergent condition, but also when something as large as Sandy hits a community. We're one of those places where we're open for business. And the largest impact on the medical center was not only the loss of power, but the number of people that came to the hospital for simply a meal, to charge your telephone, or to seek some care. As you know, the Ocean County area is a large retirement community, so we have a lot of folks with a lot of chronic illnesses and comorbidities. So things such as bottled oxygen, medications, and again, food or even shelter was important. So on the first night of the storm, it's hard to believe, in addition to the 400-plus patients, we had about 150 to 200 people in our lobbies and 300 employees who slept the night at the hospital. So we were up to about almost 900 people in the building on day one, which presented quite a challenge for us to manage through and make sure we could feed everybody and meet everybody's needs.
Wow. That's crazy. And so some of the other things, I know obviously you have partnerships with local and state offices of emergency management, the Central East Coalition for Regional Hospital Planning and Special Needs Shelters. So there are all these partnerships that are super important to what you do every day. Why don't you tell us a little bit, give us some of the staggering numbers, right? Like what numbers are going to blow us away about your 1 million square foot building, which by the way is the first one, right? So the size of the building is 1 million square feet. So how many patient transports, how many meals are you doing? What do we have going on?
Well, I'll start with the engineering department. They do about 175 work requests a day. That's everything from a broken bulb to plunging a toilet to a repair or some painting that might have to happen. On top of the daily work orders, to ensure that the building runs well, we have about 500 what we call preventive maintenance work orders, where we go in and we make sure things are working the right way, maybe add a little grease, change a belt, but the things that keep things running so that you're predictably taking care of them and they don't fail. And we have about 25 employees that manage all of that work. In addition to the 1 million square feet, they're responsible for about 24 acres of property and about 12 outside buildings. So it's quite a task for my engineering group. And they're up to it. They do a great job every day for us. I know you talked to Tom a couple of weeks ago in our food service department. They do about 2,000 meals a day. I don't think what a lot of people know is Tom is actually an executive chef and does all of the catering in the medical center, from just a continental breakfast right up to a high-level dinner with lamb chops and mint jelly. That department delivers meals not only to the emergency room but to all of our inpatients each day, and they feed breakfast and lunch to our staff. The transport department is one of those departments that is a direct patient care department within my division, and they are really the face of the hospital. They spend quite a bit of time with our patients in transport. They do about 350 transports a day. That doesn't include a lot of the small things in the emergency room, but actually moving people from their room to a test or to an exam and then back up. And that's a really dynamic team. They do a really good job of letting our folks know where we're going, why we're going there, and trying to put people's mind at ease. So wonderful, wonderful group in the transport department. Security, as you can imagine, in this day and age has become a big issue for all of us. We have a very dynamic security department. Our director is a retired Newark police captain to make sure that our entrances are safe, our folks are safe, parking lots, etc. And then without talking about infections, our environmental services team, they turn over, believe it or not, about 100 beds a day get changed.
Wow.
And that does not include the room cleaning and the square footage cleaning that has to happen. And I always tell my folks in the environmental services department, we are the infection control team here because we're the first line of defense.
That's amazing. I don't even like making one bed. I can't imagine 100 beds. I mean, that's Right, Zach? I mean, that's a lot of beds to me.
Yeah, that's a little
You got
ridiculous.
to have hospital corners on all those beds.
Yeah, that's all. That's all. I know it's got to be clean, and there's a lot going on there. All right, Neil, it's that time. All right, the time where we hand you the magic wand, the pixie dust, the fairy dust, the ability just to wiggle your nose and make an impact, make something change, make something happen. You impact so many people every day that this could be challenging for you because I'm asking you to impact more, do more. What are you going to do, Neil?
So I think if we looked at this as a large scale, I think the one thing, if I had a wish, I would really hope that the residents of Ocean County, especially in the greater Toms River area, would take the emergency planning piece seriously. It happens once every 35 years that we get these megastorms that come through. But the inability for people to take care of themselves, have a good communication plan, it really puts a drain on the ability not only of the medical center but of the emergency planners to support them. So I think making sure they've got a good solid plan and work with their community leaders so that if they need their meds, their oxygen, et cetera, and they've got a safe place to go would really be my wish.
Wow, that's it seems simple, but it's not, right? I mean, a lot of work goes into that.
There is a lot of work for the individuals, but I think if you have a good family plan, you have a good communications plan, you have a meeting point should we lose the Barrier Island again like we did for a number of months, that makes life so much easier for everybody, especially you and your loved ones.
Right. Neil, how could folks learn more about Community Medical Center or Barnabas Health? Where would they go?
So
Robert Wood Johnson, Barnabas Health, sorry.
So the RWJ Barnabas Health webpage has a lot of information about our facilities, our services, a lot of information about the great things we do at Community Medical Center. We have a community education department, and if you are in a community group and need education of some sort, or you're looking for information for your group or a speaker, I would certainly reach out to the Community Medical Center Education or Public Education Department. They're always looking to find ways to get into the community and share the great things that we do and share information about being healthy.
Cool. You could also call 1-888-724-7123 or visit barnabashealth.org/community. So there you go. Neil Bryant, Vice President, Support Services. Neil, first of all, I just want to, obviously Community Medical Center is a important, unfortunately or fortunately, part of our lives every day. You could definitely see how the hospital has grown, not only in physical plant size, but actually in overall quality, especially in recent years. You can see standards are higher and higher every day, and we are glad to have such a great group of folks helping us keep a healthy community here in Ocean County and in the greater Toms River area.
Well, thanks, Jeremy. I'm proud to be part of a team of 2,700 healthcare professionals that deliver great care each and every day.
Very cool. Neil Bryant, VP, Support Services, Community Medical Center. Thank you so much. Wake Up with Jeremy Grunin. Back after this.